One of the characteristics of Naphtali is his sociability. He is a sociable person. Deuteronomy 33:23 says, and of Naphtali he said, and Naphtali is satisfied with favor. I repeat, satisfied with favor, and full of the blessing of the Lord. It says the west and the south. Naphtali is sociable. He is satisfied with favor. He is good company. He is pleasing to everyone. It also we find in the blessing, Genesis 49:21, Naphtali is a deer let loose. He uses beautiful words, in Hebrew Imre Shefa. Once again, this word, this combination of words which have multiple meanings, all of which are applicable, which is the beauty of the Hebrew language. This word Imre Shefa, especially this word, the second part of it, Shefer, beautiful, translated as beautiful correctly, but also meaning plentiful, connoting plentiful and full of, and of super, of hyperbole. So Naphtali not only is Naphtali eloquent, but he has plenty of words, he's not lacking for words, and he stretches things, he flatters and exaggerates if necessary, if he considers it necessary. And as Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch analyzed the subject of Naphtali, and he came to the conclusion that Naphtali is an agent, he is an emissary. He's more someone who does things for other people, on behalf of other people, or an extension of other people. He is not so much a source of inspiration in his own right. But Naphtali can adapt and take the ideas and the initiatives of others and put them to good use and develop them. And Naphtali has the good of the community in general. He has the good of the whole body of people before him. He seeks to harmonize, and his own character is harmonious. He placates people. He also keeps the tribe of Dan. Dan was a bit more rambunctious, and so Naphtali keeps him connected to Israel. The chief city of Naphtali was Tiberias on the Sea of Galilee. Tiberias, in a sense, was at the center of Israel. So too, Naphtali is the middle of what is going on. And Naphtali serves as a meeting, a gathering place for all of Israel. Blessed. Genesis 49:21. Naphtali is a deer let loose. He uses beautiful words. Imre Shefa. Imre Shefa, as we have said, Imre Shefa meaning words of beauty, words of super high quality, words of extraordinary value. And this word Shefa is related to the word shofar. In Hebrew you spell the words with the same letters, and whenever in Hebrew you find words, different words spelled with the same letters, that means that on the root of the word the root of the word has a common denominator. There is a connection between them. And so we have a link between shofar and shefer. And we find the shofar connected with the future redemption of the 10 tribes of Israel and of all of Israel. It says in Isaiah 27, so it shall be in that day the great trumpet. It says the great trumpet, but in Hebrew it says shofar, the great shofar. Shofar is what they blow on Rosh Hashanah. The great shofar will be blown, and they will come who are about to perish in the land of Assyria. The words who are about to perish in the land of Assyria are Obdim Be'eretz Ashur. In other words, those who were lost, who went to be lost in the land of Assyria, they are the 10 tribes. They will come when the great shofar is blown in the end times. In other words, Naphtali is indeed, according to other commentators, not necessarily on this verse but elsewhere, Naphtali is related. Naphtali will be active, will have an active, positive role in the future redemption of the 10 tribes of Israel. And so too we see it here. The great shofar, Imre Shefa. Somehow or other there's a linkage, and this linkage will come to play. And so too, Imre Shefa also indicates aesthetic appreciation and appreciation of the beautiful. Everyone has this, but as we said before, beyond what is normal. We also find that Naphtali is connected with Dan. Dan too will play a very important role in the future redemption. Not only that, but the mother of the future Messiah of David, the mother will come from Dan. Naphtali and Dan were full brothers. They were sons of Bilhah, the maidservant of Rachel, of Rachel. Naphtali and Dan are full brothers. They're related. They're connected. They're mentioned together. They're linked to each other. Dan is said to be somewhat wild and to go off the track, and according to tradition it is Naphtali who keeps him in line and pulls him back and keeps him connected to Israel. Naphtali in ancient times dwelt beside the Sea of Galilee. And the Sea of Galilee, as well as being a central area, it was a place where boats sailed on the Sea of Galilee. They still do, and there was fishing, a lot of fishing in the Sea of Galilee. There still is, much less than there used to be, but there was a lot. And also the Sea of Galilee was used for local trading and for communication, and Naphtali was prominent in this. And even now we find in Norway, the fishing industry is very important. The Norwegians are sailors, and not only is the fishing industry important to the country, but it's very important in the culture and the diet of the Norwegians. And so too, in ancient times, the Sea of Galilee was much bigger and deeper than it is now. The climate was wetter, there was more rain, more precipitation, there was forests around, and there was a higher, a more effective rain gathering ecological environment at that time, which caused more water to accumulate, and so too in the future this too will be restored. The land will be healed as we have been promised. And so Naphtali is related to the Sea of Galilee. And if you have an aptitude for fishing, you like fishing, or you like lakes, you like sailing and so on, perhaps you too are from Naphtali. Naphtali was not the only tribe which had a seagoing or sailing affinities, but it was one of them. So there still is an indication. That's what we go on. Indication here, indication there, more and more indications. Where you get the most indications and the least negative ones, that is where you most probably belong to. And if not, you belong to one of those we are in that area, where that is what we're doing here, pointing out the generalities and probabilities and directions that are worth checking into. And this is effective. This is how all research is done. All research in every field is done along the same lines, and that's what we are doing. Fisher Ma'el, he incidentally lives in Baltimore, USA. He's a rabbi. He wrote a very important book in Hebrew. Maybe one day he will translate it into English. He wrote this book, Shivtei Israel, on the tribes of Israel, and he brings a lot of sources. Very valuable book, and he points out that Naphtali, in the different census lists and so on, is always counted as last, or often counted as last. And so this could also connote a self-oppressing quality on his part. We to some degree we are what we wish to be, and what we are reflects an inner acceptance on our part. And once getting back once more to the same expression, Imre Sheper, super words. There are also words of flattery, of ingratitude. So this is and not only that, but sometimes words of inspiration. So Naphtali is good, is eloquent, and uses his gift, both for good and for bad, and he uses it to get by. He has this streak. Naphtali also has an ungrateful streak. Are you too ungrateful? Do you not necessarily give thanks to others, or do you not realize the good that has been done unto you? There were 12 tribes when the Israelites were coming into the land of Israel, as we told in Numbers chapter 13. They appointed 12 representatives to spy out the land for them and to report back. And 10 out of the 12 spies came back with a negative report. Only Caleb from the tribe of Judah and Yahushua from the tribe of Ephraim gave positive reports. So 10 out of the 12 spies gave negative reports. Fisher Ma'el, by examining the different commentaries on the subject and the names of the spies, he came to the conclusion that Nachbi was the tribal representative of Naphtali. He was the spy representing Naphtali. He was the one who gave the worst report. He may have been the one who was responsible for the others. He may have been the major party in giving this negative report about the land of Israel. And because of this negative report, incidentally, the tribes were not allowed to go into the land straight away. They had wandered in the desert for 40 years, and great disasters. And even now, many of the disasters that are befalling us, that come upon us, are through this sin of not wanting to enter the land of Israel when we could have. And this reluctance, or this desire, this negativity against entering the land of Israel, is an aspect of Naphtali until this day. And we'll get back to the Oslo reports are responsible in Norway, what Norway did. The Oslo reports reflect the same characteristics, and we'll get into this in a minute. It also reflects ingratitude, and this too was something that Naphtali was responsible for. Are you a good team worker rather than a leader? Are you sometimes placed last in line? So, at an above average rate when things are being given out but do not really mind? Are you basically happy, progressive? Together with this, is there certain negativity in your family? So we mentioned that. Is there negativity in your family? Are you liberal, anti-colonialist, third world, sympathetic in your politics? Even if you support the state of Israel, are you sympathetic towards those who demonstrate against her? Do you at least understand them? And do you have a sympathy for the do-gooders, for the well-wishers, as if to say, for those who are always against the state of Israel, always looking for things to, and want to believe every negative report that is said about the Jewish people in the state of Israel, and they disbelieve every negative report which is said about the Arabs and said about the Palestinians, and they want to think badly. And also very often they want to think badly about America, about the West, and about Western powers in general, about their own people in general, and think only good about these poor, downtrodden Palestinians or third world peoples or whoever they are. This too is an aspect of Naphtali, or an aspect of a certain trend of thinking with which Naphtali, as well as others, was afflicted to some degree. And taking some of these points we have mentioned above and combining them, we see Naphtali as a feminine side. We saw it. We saw Naphtali as a feminine side, and Naphtali is compared to an ayala, a female deer. He likes pink. He is associated, the feminine side is associated with left-wing policies, with socialism, with third world human rights ideas, rather than with the progression, with the economics, with the basic self-assertion of family values and so on. The feminine role, when it is unleashed, when it is not connected to family, it is very destructive. And this is we find this we find this amongst Naphtali. We also find that in the USA, people who have the same tendencies support Obama, because he is all for these lower instincts, free abortion, downgrading the West, downgrading Western European values, downgrading Israel, and so on. And this too is something where the negative elements in Naphtali find expression. The spy of Naphtali was against Israelites entering the land of Israel. Naphtali has a gift for conciliation and flattery. And we're taking all of these ingredients together, third world tendencies, the anti-land of Israel, conciliation, and what do we get, what do we end up with, what have we in our hands, what have we before our eyes that happened only recently? We have the Oslo Accords. The Oslo Accords are named after Oslo, the capital of Norway, within which country we find a strong element from Naphtali. And after World War II, Norway had been ruled by a socialist but progressive and relatively good political parties which were efficient. They were also very sympathetic towards the state of Israel, because the state of Israel had been set up by the Jews who had been persecuted, and they had sympathy for those who had been persecuted. They also had sympathies for the Jews in general, and also initially the state of Israel was ruled by a socialist party, so they felt a certain affinity to them. Also there was a similar background, a similar trend of thought. So at the beginning, Norway was one of the most friendly countries to Israel on the scene. But gradually it began to change, as it did everywhere else. It became more and more pro-Palestinian, more and more anti-Israel, against the state of Israel, against the Zionist entity. Then in 1991 there was the Madrid negotiations in Spain, which were forced upon Israel. And between then and 1993, secret negotiations were undertaken in Oslo, and these resulted in the Oslo Accords that were released in 1993. They were signed at a public ceremony in Washington, D.C. in the presence of the PLO chairman Yasser Arafat, the Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, and the US President Bill Clinton. They were also signed by Mahmoud Abbas, represented the PLO, by Foreign Minister Shimon Peres for Israel, the US Secretary of State Warren Christopher for the USA, and Foreign Minister Andriy Kozyrev for Russia. And these Oslo agreements weakened the control of Israel, or the state of Israel, over sections of the West Bank. They give the Palestinians autonomy and the right to have their own little military force and to bear arms. And they brought Yasser Arafat and thousands of other of his underlings of bandits, not worse than bandits, low-life, low-grade murderers who had been exiled to Tunisia, and not at that time in the state of Israel. These were brought back into the land of Israel, into the Palestinian entity. They were given control over the local Arabs, even to some degree against the will of the Arabs. The local Arabs didn't really want them. They were forced to accept these these outside Arab radicals were forced upon the local Arab population, and this local Arab population then received millions of dollars from European governments, including Norway, as well also from America. And with this money, they armed themselves to set up a little military force, and they attacked innocent Jewish people. And thousands of Jews were killed or injured. More than 1,000 were killed. And many more were injured, permanently injured, and they're still going. And before it was put down, or some type of order was was established, but still, even now, we are still suffering from the Oslo Accords. They are still independent, and they are still hurting us, and they are still attacking us, and they are still undermining the right of the Jews to exist on this earth. It's not only living in the state of Israel; it's the very essence of existence is being undermined because of these Oslo agreements, and this is a tragedy. Oslo Accords were a crime, and they were repeating the sin of Naphtali, the representative of Naphtali in ancient times, and this is not only what the Oslo Accords brought, they also caused, or indirectly caused, throughout the world an increased radicalization of the Muslim populations everywhere, and encouraged Saudi funding of underground criminal groups to undermine the Western civilization. And they also caused the state of Israel, the existence of the state of Israel, to be challenged by progressive peoples throughout the world. The state of Israel has no longer automatically an accepted right of existence in the eyes of many Europeans, and this is partly a result of Oslo. And in Norway itself, Norway since then accepted a large number of Muslim refugees and immigrants, and these refugees and immigrants have been attacking and persecuting the local Jewish populace. And the Gentiles of Norway and the government is not doing much to protect the Jews or to help the Jews. They even often seem to take the attitude as if the Jews deserve it because of Israel. Because of the alleged mistreatment of the Arabs in Israel, the Jews in Norway deserve to be mistreated. And this is all based on lies and misrepresentations, but it doesn't really matter. This is a result of Oslo, and it just shows you that sometimes when you give in, when you compromise with evil, you don't get a better deal. You just begin to let yourself, open yourself up to be hurt and destroyed even more. Do not give in, do not compromise against evil forces, because disaster is liable to result from it. So this is what Norway and gives the way Norway has given an expression to the negative aspect of its Naphtali component.